Hello Daily Drafters, and welcome to the Edge of Eternities pre-release guide here on the channel designed to get you ready for your pre-release events this weekend. This video will be full of useful information for beginners to seasoned veterans, whether this will be your first ever pre-release or if you're looking for Edge of Eternities specific information such as a rundown on new and returning mechanics, limited archetypes, and more to make sure you're on top of your game at your LGS. So whether you're new here or you've been here a while, stay tuned for the ultimate guide in helping you crush your Edge of Eternities pre-release. Now, some of you might be asking yourself, what exactly is a pre-release? Well, each year there are roughly 4 to 6 main set releases of Magic the Gathering products, and most local game stores run what is called a pre-release for each of these main set releases. Essentially, you battle it out against your friends and strangers using several booster packs of brand new cards from the upcoming set that has yet to be released, hence the name pre-release. If this sounds interesting to you, let's take a step-by-step look at exactly how these events are run. Step 1. Locate your local game store. In order to participate in a pre-release event, you will need to find one. If you do not already have a local game store that you frequent, I've included a link in the description to a website that will help you find a game store running a pre-release event near you. Now that you've found where you'll be participating, it's time to get registered. Usually stores will run events all weekend, maybe one on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. Check with your LGS to see when the events are happening and which ones you would like to attend. Be sure to note that sometimes these events do fill up fast, so you may need to pre-register to ensure you have a spot. It just depends on your store. Other times you can just walk in and register on the spot, so be sure to find out what is best for your situation. Now that you're registered, it's time for the fun part. When it's time to start the event, you will get handed a pre-release kit like the one you see on your screen now. For this set, there is only one kit that you can receive. In other sets, sometimes you have a choice, but for Edge of Eternities, we've got just the one. Now that you've got your kit, when the event begins, you'll be instructed to open your kit and begin your deck build. It varies from store to store, but usually you will have about 50 minutes or so to build your deck and get ready for your matches. Let's take a look at what you'll find when you open your kit. Inside you will find one traditional foil rare or mythic rare from Edge of Eternities with a year stamp, and here's an example of what that card might look like using a rare from the last set, Final Fantasy, 6 Edge of Eternities play boosters, 1 20-sided spin down die, and also note that they did remove the MTG Arena code cards from pre-release packs, so there will be no more code cards for at least the time being. As many of you may be aware, draft boosters are now things of the past and were replaced with play boosters last year. This certainly threw a wrench in things when it came to drafting the last few sets, so I wanted to break down what Edge of Eternities will look like. Every Edge of Eternities play booster will contain a variation of the following: 7 commons, and 2% of the time, one of these 7 commons will be replaced by a special guest card, of which there are 10 for this set, all visible on your screen now, 3 uncommons, 1 rare or mythic rare, 1 non-foil wild card of any rarity, which has a 13% chance to be a common, a 63% chance to be an uncommon, and an 11% chance to be a rare or mythic. Now this is also the slot where you will find cards from the Stellar Sights bonus sheet. These cards are all land cards and will appear here in the wildcard slot about 13% of the time. 1 foil card of any rarity, which has a 58% chance to be a common, a 32% chance to be an uncommon, and a 10% chance to be a rare or mythic with varying art treatments. And the final slot will be a land card that has a 20% chance to be a borderless celestial basic land. Alright, we now have everything we need to begin our deck build. If you'd like to see an example of an Edge of Eternities sealed deck build, stick around until the final segment of this video, which is timestamped below, where I will build an entire sealed deck on screen for you to follow along with. After you've built your deck, you will then be assigned an opponent by the event coordinator and you will play out your first match. Different stores will give you different amounts of matches for the event, but it's usually a minimum of 3. Sometimes you might get lucky and be able to play 4 or more, it just depends. After you've finished your matches, you may qualify for some prizes, so be sure to check with the event coordinator to cash in on your winnings. Now, for those of you that might have been turned off by the exorbitant price tag of the recent Final Fantasy set, have no fear, we seem to have returned to normal for the time being. Most Final Fantasy pre-release events ran you close to $50 US or more to enter, but it seems that the going rate for Edge of Eternities is settling back in around $30 US. So if your budget is a little lower than the prices that Final Fantasy demanded, this is the set for you. What I'm going to do now is go over some of the notable mechanics for the set, go over the themes associated with the draftable archetypes, and just give you a general rundown of what's going on in Edge of Eternities before I do my deck build so we both have a better idea of what to look out for. The first new mechanic present here in Edge of Eternities comes with an entirely new artifact subtype, and that is Spacecraft and Station. Each spacecraft starts out as an artifact, but most can become artifact creatures with a little help. To do that, you'll need to use the new Station ability. Station is an activated ability that can be activated only as a sorcery. To do so, tap an untapped creature you control, including creatures with summoning sickness, and add a number of charge counters equal to the tapped creature's power to the spacecraft. Once the spacecraft has a number of charge counters on it equal to or greater than the station number, it permanently becomes a creature. For example, if Wormwall Sweeper has 3 charge counters on it, it's not a creature and does not have flying, but once it gets that 4th charge counter, it becomes a 2/2 artifact creature with flying. Now, not all spacecraft become creatures once they reach the indicated number of charge counters. If there's no power or toughness indicated, it simply means that the spacecraft will have the abilities listed in that part of the text box, but it won't become an artifact creature. The next new mechanic we have is the Warp mechanic, which will help you station those spacecrafts sooner than you may have first thought. If you cast a card with Warp from your hand, you may choose to pay its Warp cost rather than its mana cost. If you do, you will exile the permanent at the beginning of the next end step. Once the card is exiled, you can cast it from exile on a later turn. On that later turn, you will not be able to cast that card for its Warp cost anymore, but just its regular mana cost. Also, some cards care about whether a spell was warped this turn, and this means that a spell was cast by paying its Warp cost. It doesn't matter whether that spell resolved, and it doesn't matter who cast that spell. It could have even been your opponent. The final new mechanic we have is Void. Void abilities improve what cards do if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn. You can think of this a little bit like Revolt, which cares if any permanent left the battlefield under your control, but now with Void it's just non-land permanents, but it counts both players and also adds in the text about warp. In the case of Insatiable Skittermaw, it starts as a 3-mana 2/2 menace, but if you're able to trigger Void on your end step, it'll get counters. One last new mechanic note is the introduction of a new token type with Lander tokens. A Lander token is a new predefined token type joining treasure, food, and a few others. A Lander token is a colorless artifact token that has the ability to pay 2 mana and tap and sacrifice this token to search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped. All kinds of cards will have you creating Lander tokens, and each one helps you keep your mana flowing. That does it for the most notable mechanics, so let's check out the draftable archetypes that Edge of Eternities will feature, each of which are visible on your screen now. White-Blue is an archetype that cares about casting 2 spells in a single turn. We've seen this theme a few times now, usually in blue paired with another color, so we have an idea of what to expect this time around. Blue-Black is billed as a classic control deck that looks to assemble artifact synergies to accrue its advantage. There's usually an artifact deck in every set, and this looks to be Blue-Black this time around. Look to assemble artifact-based synergies while controlling the board state and making the game go long. Black-Red is the archetype that gets to make the most use out of the new Void keyword. Plan to use the Void mechanic, potentially at the expense of some of your creatures and artifacts, to produce devastating effects that are sure to turn the tides of battle in your favor. The red-green deck gets the same theme here it just had in Final Fantasy, and that is a focus on landfall. This is the deck that will make the most use of the new Lander token type to ensure that you are consistently hitting your land drops, and more so that your landfall abilities give you as much value as they can. Green-white is the deck that gets the +1/+1 counter theme in this set. Green-white hasn't seen this theme in several sets, I feel like, and it's usually pretty hit or miss, but just look to buff your creatures with counters and include counter payoffs in your deck to make sure you get as much value as you can out of them all. Blue-red also gets to play in the artifact space, but rather than a control deck, this deck is billed as an aggressive deck. Use your artifacts to assemble aggressive synergies that will keep your opponent on the back foot early on without a chance to recover. Black-green is a recursion-centric deck that focuses on filling up its graveyard and getting value from its contents. This seems to be Black-green's identity in almost every set nowadays, so we should have a pretty good idea of how to make it work at this point, but just look for graveyard synergies and you'll be well on your way. Surprisingly, red-white is not billed as an aggressive deck this time around, but rather is the deck that gets to take advantage of the new spacecraft cards the most. Tap your creatures to station up your spacecrafts, and then reap the rewards of your powered-up permanents. White-black gets the theme that is usually saved for a couple of other archetypes, and that is the Go Wide theme. Look to assemble the largest battlefield you can and overwhelm your opponents with a large number of creatures and effects that pay you off for having them. Green-blue is yet again a ramp deck, and that's pretty much all the info we have on it. Get some action early on by ensuring you're ahead of schedule with your mana, and then start casting expensive spells earlier than your opponents so that they don't have a chance to keep up with your power. Now, the hardest part about the whole event is building your deck, but good news, I will now go through an entire Edge of Eternities sealed deck build to give you an idea of what you want to be looking out for in your pool of cards and how to maximize your chance of having a competitive deck for the event. Alright, and here we are in deck building, and as I always do before we get into this deck build, I want to let you know what this interface is and how I'm able to do this, so you can do this as well at home. If you head over to the website draftsim.com, you can see the link over here in the white space next to me. You can generate seal pools and even practice draft against bots this early, as today. I'm doing it yesterday at the time of you watching this. And it does have a deck building interface on it, but I like the deck building interface of the screen you see right now, which is sealeddeck.tech. So I go ahead and export from draftsim.com, import into sealeddeck.tech, and then you've got an entire sealed deck build and pool you can use to build right here in this pretty innovative interface that I really do enjoy working with a lot here. So these are the two websites that I'm using that you can use to practice on your own with this too. So let's dive into this sealed pool of Edge of Eternities here. First thing I like to do is always just sort by rarity. You always want to see what your highest and most valuable cards are, and most of the time those are rares here. We have two gold rares, they're actually the same, Servandum Sunstar Exemplar. So we know that black-white is a go-wide creature-focused deck, as we saw in the archetype guides a little bit ago. We've got a loading zone, so if counters would be put on creatures, spacecraft, or planets, you double them up. We've got Elegy Acolyte, 4-mana 4/4 lifelink. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card, lose a life, and then that's insane. Okay. Starfield Vocalist. If a permanent entering causes a permanent or a triggered ability of a permanent, you control the triggered and triggers an additional time with warp. It's actually not that good, at least in limited. Pinnacle Star Cage, I believe, is like the small board wipe. And for 8 mana, you can get a couple things. If we do end up going, already looking black-white potentially, this probably isn't at its best in there. Now, there are some rare lands in this set, and it's always a bummer when you get those in your seal pool. Unless you're, looking for a $10 bill, then Watery Grave is pretty good. Although this one, it didn't give you the version that you get to open in this set, which it does have the Edge of Eternities thing, but I think the Watery Grave version might be one of those crazy art things. I don't even know necessarily. But we've got Lightstall Inquisitor, 1 mana 2/1 Vigilance. When this creature enters, they exile a card, and they may play it for as long as it remains exiled. And then it costs 1 more and lands enter tapped. So all of our rares are in black and white, except green and blue that aren't very good in a land here as well. So I'll start by looking in black and white. We've got the black, white, gold uncommon as well, Servandum here, as well as blue, green, and sorry, green, red, and blue, red. What are our black and white uncommons to go along with our rares here? Honor, great. Seam Rip, that's pretty good. That's like, I can't remember the name of the 1 mana artifact that does this. There's an artifact as well. Honored Knight Captain, 2 mana, makes 2 creatures. It's pretty good for things like Servandum. Ray Blade Trooper, 3 mana, 2/2, enters, put a counter on something, and whenever non-token creature you control with a counter on it dies, make a 1/1, and it has warp. Yeah, that's pretty good. Wedge Light Rammer. A 4 mana 3/4 potentially maybe, but when it enters it makes a 2/2 and it also has station. That's probably good enough here. We got some black stations, 5 mana 4/3 flying that also acts as an edict when it enters. That's not super great, but I'll bring it in for now. Caesarian Voidborn, 3 mana 2/2 when it enters, or whenever this creature or another creature or artifact you control dies, they lose a life, you gain a life. Well, in this kind of deck, this is probably going to actually be pretty good. Fell Graveship, 3 mana 3/2 flying lifelink only if you're able to station it with 8+. And when it enters, you mill 3 and return a creature or spacecraft. That might not be what this deck is trying to go for. Hymn of the Faller. 2 mana surveil 1, draw a card, lose a life, and then void, draw another card. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Kind of like that. This reminds me of the one from Final Fantasy that just overperformed. The 2 mana look at 3 cards and put 1 in your hand, 2 in the graveyard. A 1 mana 4/1 defender. What a card. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, is there any uncommons in other colors that would pull us away from this black-white start here? +3/+2. If it was warped, it gains trample and haste. That's actually kind of interesting, but not great. Invasive Maneuvers, that's going to be a great removal spell in this set, for sure. Intimidator, Ardent, Tractor Beam, steal a thing, but it's sleep magicked. Mouth of the Storm, a little expensive. I mean, this is looking pretty easy so far, unless we have, like, a ton of commons that bring us away from this. We do have 2 Bombards. Bombards are a good removal spell in this set, but in black-white, what do we have? The Pilot, 2 mana 2/2 tap, surveil 1, sure. 3 mana 2/4 vigilance, and if you cast 2 spells, it's a 4/4. We got 2 of those, sure. 3 mana creatures, you get +2/+0. If it's not your turn, tap them, probably. I do like the Night Luminary. It's a 4 mana 3/2, comes with a 1/1, but it has warp for 1 and a white, and we have 2 of those. Lux Knight Breacher, 4 mana 2/2, enters with a counter on it for each other creature and or artifact you control. These usually underperform a little bit. Auxiliary Boosters, it's like 5 mana 3/4 flyer that dies into an equipment, basically. And then 6 mana 3/4, get a counter on things with warp. Hull Carver, Depressurize Removal, I do like Virus Beetle. Comet Crawler, Decode Transmissions, got 2 of those in the Skitter Maw that we saw in our preview here as well. Don't really like Temporal, and then we do have a Grav Kill as well. There is Galactic Wayfarer here, which I think is going to be one of the better commons in the set. There's Ice Cave Crasher, basically a 4 mana 5/4 trample attacker, kind of. 7 mana 4/4 flyer, deal 3 to anything. It's a dragon, interesting. Orbital Plunge, 4 mana, deal 6. If excess was dealt this way, create a lander, but it is a sorcery. That's also a pretty good removal. So there's some pretty good removal in red here, but I mean, look at this pool that we've already got. So one thing I mentioned in each of these deck builds as well, and for those of you that have been here a while, you probably heard me say this, but most of the time your first instinct is probably correct. Now, you do have 50 minutes, like I mentioned earlier, so you do have some time to toy around with some other things. I'm not going to let you sit through this for 50 minutes. I'm making this a little bit brief for you, but if you're at your pre-release and you see something like this, most of the time your first instinct is going to be correct with what you want to build. You can take a look at some of the other cards here. I might take a look at some red in this pool as well. But it's really hard to give up on double, I guess triple Servandum, as well as all of these really good go wide white creatures that we have as well. So this is my instinct right now. So I'm going to go ahead and make a cut in the video. I'm going to test other things out on my own as I would if I was in my own pre-release. And I'm going to make a cut to what the final deck build is going to be here for this pool. Okay, and to the surprise of no one, I still landed on black-white here. We've just got too many good cards, too many good synergies, too many good rares. I mean, Elegy Acolyte is the best card in our entire pool. We have to make sure we play black for that. We've got 2 Servandums, which go very well. The Inquisitor, it's not a bomb or anything, but it's a nice, good, solid card here. We've got the Servandum uncommon as well. Lots of great black and white creatures, some removal. This is kind of like a creature. I separated by non-creatures here as well. We've got the Depressurize, the Seam Rip, and Gravkill as our removal. Not a ton of removal necessarily, so if you really felt like you needed a ton of removal, you could potentially go with some of this red in this pool and maybe go something like black-red with double Bombard, double Orbital Plunge. There might be a black-red deck in here somewhere. I would hate to leave a lot of these white cards on the sideline as well, but this is what I would go with if I was building in my pre-release this weekend, and hopefully this was able to give you a little bit of an idea for those of you that really haven't done this before. It's been quite a while about what play boosters look like, what decisions that you're presented with when you're looking at pools like this to make your deck, and that'll do it for this one. So thanks for tuning in for the deck build. I hope this video was helpful to you and helps you build up the courage needed to go participate in a pre-release event at your LGS this weekend. If you've never been to one before, I highly recommend it. It's one of the absolute most fun ways to play Magic, and you'll meet tons of different players there. If you do end up going, return back to this video and leave a comment. Let me know how it went for you. I'd love to hear feedback from all of you about your event. Thanks so much for sticking around until the end of this video, and I'll see you here soon at Daily Draft.